Just a minute. Okay. Camera, start video. Yeah. Okay, there I am. Andreas, how are you?
Good, Dale. Nice to meet you
Good.
here.
Nice to meet you.
Dale, is it cold up there?
It's in the 60s now, upper 60s.
Okay.
There's, yeah.
Hi, Jack.
Jakeem,
Yep.
do you know Jack? I don't know if you know Jack.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Jakeem. You can see him in the center of the picture.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Hello.
Hi. How are you doing?
Just fine, thank you. And you too?
Good, good. You're in Washington right now, isn't it? You're calling.
Just 50 miles north of Seattle.
Okay.
Hi, Jack. Nice to meet you, Jack.
Jack,
Here.
that's Andreas on
Hi,
to
Andreas. Pleased to meet you.
Uh,
You have a colleague here,
Hi.
you say? Yeah.
I think the Italian person not yet coming. Maybe still sleeping.
no, I thought he sent you an email. I thought he.
Yeah, he did. He sent me emails, but yeah, and also I sent him.
Do you have him on WhatsApp?
Yes, email.
Yeah. Just send him a message.
Let's see. Okay, let me see. I sent him the link, and I thought, Andreas, you also sent him a second link, correct?
Yes.
So,
Let me.
Yeah, let me see what I can do with.
Yeah, I'm worried if he's sleeping because now it's about 3 o'clock.
It's 3:30. Yeah.
3:30. Yeah.
Let me go look at emails and see what we have there. Here is the link. To Okay, I'm asking him if he's still up.
Dale, you have his phone number?
No. Let me just see. I might have it on.
Or if you have his WhatsApp.
Yeah, well, I'm looking at WhatsApp right now. Just a moment. I just sent him an email. Okay, here we go. Message. Okay, I'm going to send him a WhatsApp. Oh, maybe I can get his number. Let's see. Yeah, I'm calling him right now.
Jack, that's a nice picture that you have behind you.
I'm apologize for the noisy coming from here because at the moment I'm
Yes. Hi, Julio.
in the airport.
It's fine, Andreas. There's no noise.
Can you connect to the presentation?
You can have the connection directly. You can share the screen.
Okay. Okay. Let's see. I just sent an email with the address. You just have to. Do you have Zoom on your computer? Okay. Then did you get? I sent you an email with the link, the URL. I sent it. Yeah, I sent one earlier today, and on something. Then our okay. Well, let me. Let's see. I guess I'll have to. Okay. Let's what. Okay. Or maybe I can have you type it in. Let me see.
Dale, I can probably send it to him.
Okay. Well, how would you send it to him? He didn't receive any of our emails, so I'm worried that he's been looking for our emails.
Should I send it to him by WhatsApp?
Yeah, send it to him by WhatsApp. Can you do that? Yeah, we're gonna send it to you by WhatsApp.
Oh, I don't have his WhatsApp, Dale.
You know. Oh, wait. Hold on, just a minute. Okay,
I don't have his WhatsApp.
Okay, let me just tell you the URL. Okay, can you write this down? Okay. I'll spell it. BIT dot LY /link link LINK URL Mariculture MARICULTURE. That should do it. It's a short URL. Let me repeat one more time. Yeah. No double point. It's one word. Link URL Mariculture. One word.
Andreas, do you have his email address? You can send a link to
Already,
him again.
already I sent it this morning.
Okay.
It's hold on. Let me just. Can you please be quiet for just a minute, guys? bit.ly /link URL Mariculture. No spaces. Okay, thank you. I'll send you a second email. Okay, ciao.
Dale, the password you have to tell him.
I don't know. I didn't need the password.
Okay.
So he wants to send. I'll send the email one more time. I don't know. I worried that his let's see.
Good morning, everyone. Shall we start the meeting, the webinar for today? I think one speaker, he's still trying to join the webinar, but now it's already, we have 10 minutes late from the time.
Okay. Link. Okay, I sent him the link also. So I think we should go ahead though. Andreas,
Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone in Jakarta. Good evening from US panelists, and also good evening from the colleagues from the Europe. And it is a great pleasure for us to organize this, the 5th International Maritime webinar with a topic about technology of adaptation of the technology for sustainable mariculture. So we have excellent 6 panelists here, and hoping we can have a good brief information from the expert about what is the sustainable in practice for mariculture. Here, I would like to invite our moderator or the chairman of this webinar, Dr. Joachim Goes. He is the professor from the Columbia University at the US. So please, I would like to hand over the floor to the moderator. Please, Joachim.
Yeah, thank you, Andreas, and good evening from New York City, and good morning to you all in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, wherever you're joining from. I am going to be chairing this webinar today, and I'll start with a little slideshow to give you some perspective about the promise and potential for mariculture in Indonesia. So as you can see on the left, you can see the globe where Indonesia lies in between 2 ocean basins, the Pacific Ocean and the Indian Ocean. And for a biological oceanographer like me, the exchange of water masses between this Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean through this gateway of the Indonesian archipelago is probably one of the most fascinating places on Earth to study. But today we are going to be focusing on mariculture. And the reason is that this area is not only important from the world ocean circulation and climate, it is probably one of the most productive tropical ecosystems on our planet. And just to give you some perspective of Indonesia. So Indonesia is the largest archipelagic country in the world. And I was shocked today to learn that it has got about 17,508 islands. This is so impressive. So its combined coastline measures around 54,800 kilometers. And this is the second longest coastline in the world after Canada. And it encompasses about 1.9 million square kilometers of landmass, but the seas around it that belong to Indonesia are about 3.3 million square kilometers. And the EEZ of Indonesia is the 6th largest in the world. And so you can imagine Indonesia is surrounded by really highly productive seas and probably one of the most biologically diverse coral reefs in the world. So just to give you some perspective, if you look on the left, this is from a paper by Oinola in PLOS ONE. It appeared in 2019. And it shows you, based on this habitat mapping, which are the areas of the world that are really good areas to very suitable areas for mariculture. And you can see the seas around Indonesia are probably one of the best areas where you can have mariculture. And the study goes a step forward in that it says that if you look on the right over here, the topmost finfish is probably one of the best aquaculture vertebrates to be grown in mariculture, followed by crustaceans, and mollusks do not have an important place over here. But if we look at this very carefully, you see in the next slide that Indonesia, although it has this amazing and highly productive waters that are very suitable for mariculture, most of what Indonesia produces is either freshwater or brackish water. Marine culture, aquaculture is very, very at its early stages. And Indonesia produces this is the second largest producer of fish in the world after China. And compare this to China. China does a lot of freshwater aquaculture, but completely opposite to Indonesia, marine mariculture is quite big, and brackish water is far less. And if you see the aquaculture production in both in several countries that are the leading producers of aquaculture-based products, you can see that China is probably one of the world's largest producers of aquaculture. So it produces about 63.7 million metric tons per year. Compared to that, Indonesia produces about 16.6. And all the other smaller countries, you can see that it goes down. I went a step further and I divided the amount of aquaculture produced by the length of the coastline. And as I said, the coastline of Indonesia is about 54,000 kilometers compared to China, which is 14,000. And you can see if you divide that, China's production goes higher and Indonesia comes very low, and it is even lower than countries like India, Bangladesh, and so forth. So this tells you that there's a lot to be done in mariculture, and there are lots of opportunities. Indonesia's waters, to my mind, as I see it, are underexploited. And this seminar or this webinar is to look for a path forward where we can expand on mariculture technology in Indonesia. So today, the title of the webinar today is Technology Adaptation for Best Practice in Sustainable Mariculture. And the word sustainable is very important over here because this is what is essential if you are going to have a productive and viable mariculture industry. So today we have 6 speakers, and I'm happy to note that we have the chairman from the Indonesian Maritime Affairs Office, and we have Dale Kiefer, and I'll be introducing everyone, but just to give you an idea that we have people at different levels of practice in mariculture. There are some purely research driven scientists over here with us. And we have in the field practitioners who have set up farms all over the world, and they will be speaking today. So we have a very interesting lineup, and I'll start today's talk with that by Andreas. Can you just share minister's screen, please, so that I can introduce him?
Yeah. think
Okay. So our first speaker for today is Professor Sarayev Vijaya. He is the chairman of the Agency of Maritime and Fisheries Research and Human Resources. And he is affiliated with the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries of the Republic of Indonesia. And this is a very important ministry in Indonesia. And he leads this effort for marine fisheries research and aquaculture farming as well. But just to give you a little background of Dr. Vijaya, he has a bachelor's degree from the naval architecture from the ITS Surabaya. He then proceeded on to do his master's in ship production at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, UK. And thereafter, he obtained a PhD in computer-aided ship production. So he has a very illustrious career, and he brings a lot of his technology to the goals of the Ministry of Maritime Affairs. So with this brief introduction, I welcome Professor Vijaya to please give this talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Professor Joachim. It is a pleasure for me to be in here among all the distinguished speakers and experts from all over the world. So, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam damai sejahtera bagi kita semuanya. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Very good morning to all of you. Your Excellency, Professor Rohmin Dahuri, Chairman of Indonesian Aquaculture Association and advisor to Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries on Human Resources, Innovation Technology, and Research. Your Excellency, Dr. Safri Burhanuddin, Deputy Minister Coordinating, Ministry of Maritime and Investment Affairs. Professor Joachim Goes, the Earth Institute, Columbia University. Dr. Chiuli Brisi, Director Research and Development, GHLAMYS, Sri, Italy. Professor Dale Kiefer, Professor of Biological Sciences, Department of Biology of University of Southern California. Mr. Jack Rensel, Rensel Associate Aquatic Science and System Science Application, and other speakers and participants. First of all, I would like to thank to the Almighty God for His grace and blessing, so that despite this challenging time due to the global pandemic of COVID-19, we can still meet in this webinar to discuss about fisheries improvement through technology adaptation in mariculture. So the slide, please. Yeah. Well, Indonesia lies along the tropical waters with abundant marine and fisheries resources. Indonesia marine biodiversity is incredible, with more than 8,500 species of biota live in, which open up opportunities for the development of aquaculture, especially mariculture. Indonesia area for aquaculture is very large and holds potential for further development. However, this potential remains largely unused. Nearly 17.91 million hectares of aquaculture land, and only 5.35% of which is currently used for production. So from the strengthness of the Indonesia, the city, the land area, the main commodity and opportunity for the export and food security, quality assurance systems, job creation, and the opportunity to use digitalization of aquaculture business. This is an area that we can expand our technology and innovation to boosting the aquaculture in Indonesia. Next. From the perspective of sustainable food, commodities in mariculture, such as lobster, are highly sought after by international market and are very potential to be utilized as a quality protein source for national needs. Furthermore, the vast potential land combined with stable tropical climate have provided Indonesia with great advantage for mariculture development. The challenge of aquaculture development, first we have to face the problem of the seed management, the zone management and fish health, especially to combat with the disease, what we call it, for the mariculture. Management of feed and medicine fish, production and business management, and cross-sectoral aspect supported by some others area like infrastructure, electricity, fresh water, and other ministry responsible for doing that. Next, the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries is attempting to increase aquaculture production, including mariculture production, and has created a strong enabling policy environment to support aquaculture growth. This is necessary to keep up with the global demand. This is the highlights of the aquaculture problems. First, about the logistic systems is an educate. The competence of human resources, management of disease and environmental control, marketing of marine aquaculture product, and utilization, the potential of aquaculture fisheries, production system and certification, fish aquaculture, lack of supporting infrastructure. This is the problem that facing all the farmers in Indonesia. Marine aquaculture commodities 2020-2024, and also the production target and seeds of marine aquaculture. Next, the strategy of aquaculture development. Arrangement of production center area, production increase, business development, investment and market access, infrastructure development and connectivity, fish health management environment, human resources, and strengthening the institution and capacity building and stakeholder commitment. However, and under control, inadequate production input logistic, inefficient production system for some marine fish, the need to improve environmental sustainability by improving needs and reducing environmental impact, and market issues relating to environmental sustainability. Next, this is the geographical map of Indonesia and the potential and utilization of fisheries management zone based on because we have around 19,500 kilometers length of the zone of across Indonesian geographical area, and then with the this zone we developed the mariculture with like grouper, pepper, and others. Next, this is a kind of the commodities, based on the fisheries management zone. Yeah. Next. This kind of the commodities that we have to be potential fish, crab, yeah, tilapia, yeah, saltwater tilapia, and shrimp, seaweed, sea fish, ornamental. This is also we have around 4,300 species of ornamental fish in Indonesia. So this needs to be explored for the future. And also shell and pearls. This kind of the potential commodities that to be developed for the next 2020-2024. Priority commodities next. Clustering, yeah. And secondly, is about seaweed business cluster, development of grouper business cluster, development of star pomfret fish business cluster, and development of lobster business cluster. To support this development, robust research and development are undertaken to improve aquaculture production system, promote production efficiency, create higher product quality and more sustainable industry. Of production system and trade digitalization. This will provide more effective and efficient supply chain, which will increase farmers' profit margin. For another commodities, we have an example like snapper, white snappers. Next. This is the kind of area that we can produce the white snappers, and across the Indonesian geographical area, we can set up a production center. And what is the center of consumption and export? The business of the fisheries. Other strategies to promote aquaculture development, including arrangement of production center areas, increase of production, fish health management and environment, infrastructure development and connectivity, improvement of human resources, science and technology development, also business development, investment and market access. This is kind of the example. Next, the example of the central location for snapper production. So based on the potential, we have a set sebelumnya. Yeah, this is the map of aquaculture location, and from this area, we set up the target of production. Next. Yeah, from Java Island, North Sumatra, East Kalimantan, most area of Celebes of Sulawesi Island, Moluccas, and Papua. Next, this is area for the seaweed development. Next. And we, from 2020 and 2024, we concentrate on the area, this area for the seaweed. South Sumatra, South Kalimantan, East Java, Sulawesi, and Papua, yeah, West Papua. Yeah. And north of Kalimantan. Next. This is for the grouper. Based on the this is the location of the Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries to concentrate on the grouper development production center. In the west part of Sumatra, south of Sumatra, east part of Kalimantan, yeah, East Java, and Nusa Tenggara, West Nusa Tenggara, yeah, a part of Moluccas. Next. Yeah, this is for the and this is the plan of the Minister of Marine Affairs and Fisheries to develop the star pomfret seed, yeah, in East Sumatra, South Sumatra, and West Nusa Tenggara. Next. A part of that, we need mariculture facilities and infrastructure for all the area that we decide to develop the production center for all the commodities. Absolute necessity. And therefore, the quality assurance system is rigorously placed throughout the process from hatchery to grow out to the standard setting. Next. The implementation of the best aquaculture practices, or we call it CPIB in Indonesia, or best aquaculture handling practices certification through the registration of fish seed and medicine, residual monitoring, and fish disease surveillance is very important to develop the aquaculture opportunities for numerous workforce and entrepreneurs and greatly reduce unemployment while improving community welfare. This is because of its popularity for being sustainable and ecological friendly, as well as for being easily implemented with quicker harvest period. Thank you. I really hope that through this discussion, we can have the fruitful discussion and solution.
Thank you, Professor Wijaya. That was, and thank you very much for sharing Indonesia's ambitious plans for mariculture. I think you have laid the groundwork, and our next speaker for today is Dr. Dale Kiefer. He's a professor at the University of Southern California. He's not only my personal friend, but he's been a partner in many of the projects that we do together. But Dale has a very interesting career. He was involved with the first ocean color mission that was launched at the Coastal Zone Color Scanner. But Dale has got varied interests, and he delves not only into planktonic biology, but his interests also go into aquaculture and modeling. Dale got his bachelor's degree from Yale. He got his master's from Oregon State University, and then he got his PhD from Scripps Institute of Oceanography at the University of, that was the University of San Diego. So Dale, why don't you take over? We can't hear you, Dale. Can you put your speaker on?
Yes, just a moment.
Yeah. And you can use your slide in projection mode, okay?
Yeah. Just a moment. Maybe I'll have to do this.
Okay.
Hold on, just a moment.
No,
stop share.
Don't worry, Dale. You take your time. But I just want to let the audience know that you can hold your questions, and we will have enough time to have fruitful discussions at the end of the talks given by the speakers. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. And I'll project it. Thank you, Joachim, and thank you, Andreas, for inviting me to this very interesting webinar. I'm going to show our work we've developed with my company and in collaboration as members of this company, Jack Rensel and Frank O'Brien, both. Frank is the programmer for the software that I'm going to discuss, and Jack is a long-term consultant and former operator of salmon farms in Puget Sound area of Washington State. And I'm just going to take you through what I think is a technological advance. It's a software advance for simulation of fish farms. We've also applied it to seaweed farms. And these simulations allow people to better place their fish farms in locations that are optimal for operations. They also can be used for environmental impact assessment. And if the goal of fish farming is to produce food in a sustainable fashion, we certainly need engineering tools to guide us in optimization of how big farms should be, where they should be located, how many nets, what type of species should be grown, what are the demands, the environmental demands that lead to effective and long-term productivity and without environmental damage. So I'm going to start out with a strong statement that says that and asserts that advances in our understanding of fish metabolism and the trophic dynamics of plankton and benthic communities have provided us, that is the people of the world or the scientists involved in oceanography and fish farming, with opportunities to develop models of fish farm operations and environmental impacts. And I want to make the argument with a series of slides. This is the AquaModel software, and you can see it as a full ecosystem-based model in which we basically have fish farms operated in a realistic fashion in terms of supply of feed to the farm, the harvesting of the fish, this farm, and we can handle hundreds of cages for that matter over large areas, or look at a single cage at one location and look at the growth rate and the fate of waste materials produced by that cage or that farm or that industry in a given region. In this case, we have illustrate the importance of currents, which bring oxygen to the fish farm, and also though impose a current in which the fish have to swim and could be utilizing energy to maintain their location at a position within the fish farm. With the feed comes particulate organic waste, which settles carried away from the farm, is deposited in the sediments, can be resuspended if bottom currents are rapid at certain times, for example, during a tidal cycle, or just settle there, remain there, and then are subject to the microbial remineralization process that occurs in the sediments. In our model, we have bacteria that can be aerobic bacteria consuming oxygen as the electron acceptor, or we can have anaerobic species present, and the competition for the food produced by the farm and the ambient waters will determine, and the rate at which organic material reaches the bottom will determine whether the system will be aerobic, which is desirable, or anaerobic, which often leads to disease and the production of hydrogen sulfide. Just a minute. Soluble materials are produced as either nitrogen, phosphorus, dissolved materials, which are streaming away from the farm in a plume and can stimulate the growth of phytoplankton, zooplankton in the plume regions, and can lead to in large overdeveloped areas can lead to harmful algal blooms. So the purpose of this software is, among other things, to optimize the feed rate so that excess feed doesn't end at the bottom, and to determine the carrying capacity of the environment to fish farm operations. The model itself is three-dimensional. It's basically a Eulerian description, and it includes the flow of water, the currents, as well as the deposition of particulate organic material and the sweeping free of the dissolved waste material by the fish. This lower layer shows a sediment layer where the waste material is accumulating and is subject to microbial degradation. We have a fish farm, a fish model, which is a physiological model that covers the general aspects of metabolism. That's the consumption of food with potential waste, feed waste, the ingestion of that food, the egestion to produce fecal materials that settles to the bottom. The ingested materials could then be divided into either demands for basal metabolism, and that is largely driven by temperature, the growth of the fish, and the swimming speed, the amount of energy it takes for the fish to burn and maintain a position within the cage. What's left over after you satisfy the needs for basal metabolic metabolism and swimming is the energy and the biomass, the nutrients to lead to growth of the fish. And of course, the system that is sought is a system where we maximize the growth rates of the fish. And we can write, and I'm not going to do the tape because of the time. The equations are relatively simple. Just basically a description of the flow of carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen through the fish farm and the ambient waters that receive the waste material. The model works well. This is a picture of predicted growth rates of Atlantic salmon as a function of the temperature of the water and the feed rate. Here we show in the solid lines a feed rate which accounts for the Atlantic salmon that are provided 6% of their body weight on a daily basis, 3% of their body weight, or 1.5% body weight. And we run the model and we can see that we can reproduce the response in terms of feed rate and temperature nicely with the dotted line showing a good agreement between predictions and observations. These are the fish that we have modeled. We put in full metabolic models for energy use and transformations of those elements, carbon, nitrogen, and oxygen. And we have a range of both tropical fish and more temperate species of fish. And these can be expanded. The model is fairly flexible to take a fairly small amount of information about growth and respiration and transfer it into a good estimate of growth rate and need for food and waste production by that species. The material that settles onto the bottom is a model that we call the Benthic model. And in the Benthic model, we have populations of aerobic microorganisms mixed with anaerobic microorganisms. The aerobic organisms, of course, consume oxygen, and the anaerobic organisms basically are driven. In this case, we model it largely through the reduction of sulfate to produce hydrogen sulfide. These two microbial groups compete for the particulate organic carbon that is deposited in the sediments, and the resulting metabolism that occurs leads to demands for oxygen by the aerobes, the production of hydrogen sulfide by the anaerobic organisms, fluxes of carbon dioxide by the respiration process of both the aerobic and anaerobic microorganisms, and the supply of sulfate to drive the anaerobic organisms. And essentially what happens, these are all mathematically described, but essentially as you add more and more carbon compounds, let's say with a heavy overdeveloped region of fish farms, that excess fuel to drive respiration leads to the depletion of oxygen in the sediments and a favoring then of anaerobic organisms that are less desirable in the environment. The system is, the mathematical system is relatively simple. We basically treat it as a water column, in which there's a certain concentration of oxygen. There's the sediments where the metabolic activity of the aerobic and anaerobic bacteria occurs. And then there is a very thin sub-centimeter benthic boundary layer where there's a linear decrease in oxygen as determined by the oxygen concentration in the water column and the rate of oxygen consumption by the benthic aerobic organisms. So we put all of these equations for fish metabolism, the transport of waste materials away from the farm in terms of particulate materials. And in the case of this benthic dynamics, I think for the sake of time, I'll just summarize it. And you can actually calculate using the model, what will be the oxygen concentrations in the sediments for a given rate of microbial loading or organic loading of the sediments. And so if the load of carbon in this region, this is waters where the oxygen concentration is 10, the concentration of oxygen will stay relatively high. The water, basically a good supply of diffusion of oxygen in the sediments, will maintain a lot of oxygen in the sediments. If you have a heavy loading, a 5-fold increase, the oxygen concentration in the sediments will drop into what's called the hypoxic zone, or could actually even go all the way to the position of anaerobic or anaerobic conditions where there's no oxygen. Obviously not attractive. And this can be seen in field measurements where if you load too much carbon into the system over at different times of the year, one sees a linear increase in oxygen consumption and carbon dioxide production. But if you add too much, the system falls apart and starts crashing, where the oxygen, there is no longer respiration and production of carbon dioxide to balance the influx of organic carbon from ambient waters and the farms. And you can see the same thing in terms of looking at the carbon flux to the sediments and the rate of CO2 production, which for a large area or large region can be balanced. That is, the microbes are there to help maintain the system in a healthy condition, but with too much carbon production or loading of the sediments, the system once again crashes and falls to an unhealthy state where disease can easily break out, and the growth rates of the fish would likely decline. The final component of the model is the phytoplankton, and that consists of the zooplankton. The phytoplankton take the organic or the inorganic waste from ambient waters and from the farm, transfer through the process of photosynthesis to phytoplankton biomass. They are eaten by zooplankton, the nutrients are recycled, and you get this recycling process in which excess dissolved inorganic nitrogen as a limiting element can drive large increases in the phytoplankton blooms, particularly if zooplankton can't maintain their sufficient growth rate, and you'll get the possibility of big blooms, in some cases harmful algal blooms. And we've done this in our studies with Jack. We've run models for experimental fish farms off the coast of Rhode Island, or Vermont, New Hampshire. And the model, here's model simulations of inorganic nitrogen and the dissolved inorganic nitrogen as measured by chemical oceanographers and physicists. And we can both accurately simulate the dynamics of inorganic nitrogen in the water column, and we can actually simulate algal blooms that occur in the springtime and the fall at the farm site. Here's examples, and I'm almost finished. Here's examples of a fish farm simulation. This is a fish farm. Actually, it's not. It was a demonstration in Vietnam in Hai Long Bay for the cages. There's about, I'll just estimate something like 20 cages here in Hai Long Bay. We loaded these cages up with one of the farm fish, and we then can look at with our simulation model, we can look at the plume, the size of the plume of nutrient-rich waters produced by the farm fish in terms of excreted nitrogen or depleted oxygen waters that are within that same plume. And one can look at things like the production of hydrogen sulfide underneath the farms due to the particulate organic material settling to the sediments. Underneath the farms, as drawn by this line here, we see a depression of oxygen in the sediments below, approaching anoxic conditions immediately below the farm because of excess deposition of organic material. Here's a footprint from the Hai Long Bay simulation showing the depleted concentration of oxygens under these very large cages and shaped by the currents and the size of the farm. Finally, I think I'll skip with that. I went quickly, but I wanted to show you that we have a capability now, and we're not the only ones, but we have the most, I'd say, the most complete ecological description of operations of farms and their environmental impact. And we believe that given even a small amount of information environmentally, we could provide important decision-making for looking at the carrying capacity for farms in a given region and actually locating optimal regions for fish farm operations, and even to provide information on feeding rates and harvesting times for the farm. So thank you very much for your attention. And if there is more time, I can make some general statements about the great opportunities in aquaculture, but I think I've gone over my time already.
Thank you so much, Dale. And you addressed the question about aquaculture practice. And one of the big questions is the environmental impact. And I think your model would be really helpful to practitioners for site selection and also to undertake environmental impact assessments before the cages are loaded. Thank you so much. So
I would like to, can I say one more thing? Just that Jack Renzo will give you more examples of the application of the farms.
Okay, thank you so much, Dale. Our next speaker for today is Bapak Professor Rokmin Dahuri. He's the chairman of the Indonesian Aquaculture Association, and he's the head advisor to the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Fisheries on Human Resources, Innovation, Technology, and Research. He has served as a scientific advisor to the Center for Tropical Marine Ecology, which is based in Bremen. And he has served on several institutions representing the government of Indonesia. And one of them is the Convention of Biological Diversity, which is based in Geneva, Switzerland. With this brief introduction, I call upon Professor Rokmin Dahuri to give his talk.
Thank you so much, Professor Joachim Cruz. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. May God peace and blessing be upon all of us, and very good morning. Professor Sarif Wijaya, the chairman of Agency for Research and Human Resource Development, Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries, Dr. Safri Burhanuddin, Deputy for Maritime Resources, Coordinating Ministry for Maritime Investment Affairs, the best speakers from US, from Italy, and I believe some of them also from the Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to thank to Dr. Safri for inviting me to be one of the speakers in this very highly important seminar although online because of COVID-19, but it's okay. Let me share my some slide presentation. Di sini ya, benar ya? Oke. Okay, my sharing will be how to enhance Indonesian sustainable mariculture for what? For producing seafood, pharmaceutical products, bioenergy, and other related products for human prosperity. And let me start with at least 10 reasons why mariculture can be a leading sector and prime mover of Indonesian economy. The first reason is of course, the increasing number of human population and the purchasing power consequently will multiply the demand for seafood, other food commodities, pharmaceutical products, energy, and other natural resources. And I believe, from what I understand from the definition of aquaculture, mariculture will be able to produce, again, not only animal protein, but also other commodities. Second reason, fish and seafood production from capture fisheries in both marine and freshwater ecosystem has reached its peak in 1990s at around 100 million metric tons per year. In addition, food production from agriculture on land tends to be stagnant or declining due to conversion of agricultural lands in other land uses, pollution, global climate change, and other environmental degradation. This is supporting data that confirm my argument that according to FAO by 2025, the global need for food will be increasing by 50% compared as of today. And this is also the other what we call research result from UK, that if our Earth temperature increased by 1 centigrade, and then the what we call the capacity of our Earth to produce food will be reduced by 10%. And this is the data that demonstrate to us aquaculture indeed increasing while capture fisheries has been leveling off. This is another data supporting the important role of mariculture. This is the other data, yeah, that as you can see, the aquaculture on the blue line keep increasing while capture fishery production leveling off. And this is the other data from Fistat. In 2014, the global seafood production for consumptions only 49%, sorry, in 2012, and in 2030 it will be increased by 60-something%. Third reason is the fact that from in Indonesia, 2/3 of Indonesian territory covered by sea or marine water, and potential of development as already explained by Professor Johim of Mariculture as provided by Professor Johim earlier, that utilization rate of mariculture development in Indonesia is very, very low, or I can say at early stage. For reasons that mariculture produces not only animal protein, but also materials for pharmaceutical industries and other industries. When properly, mariculture is actually business. Upstream and downstream, and the bubble up production in the is mariculture production, yeah. And as I said, definition of is not only taken from and conventional rules feel itu is mostly from we have also seaweed and of course for jewelry. But I would like to encourage all of the non-conventional products like algae-based feed, pharmaceutical product from bioactive compounds of microalgae and other culture species. This is the example. Indonesia, up until now, is the largest producer of salt sea pearl in the world. Yeah, so it's a good potential. Yeah, and if we make processing from seaweed, as you can see, the tree of seaweed is tremendous. This is just to give you example from use or processed to produce medical and natural function. Yeah? Just to, you know, time, just to give you an illustration or wind from the web stream can be converted into phytosan, which is very useful for human health. This is collagen from marine invertebrates. And in Indonesia, we have found that one of the species of our seaweed, which is sargassum, actually contain what we call bioactive compound for fertilizer. Yeah? And I would like to encourage all of us that basically mariculture one day can be used for cultivating even food crop. In China, for example, has been able to produce or productivity is about 4.5 tons per hectare. Yeah? This is incredible innovation from our Chinese scientist fellow. And 7 reason is mariculture provide huge employment opportunities. Mariculture mostly take place in rural coastal areas and outside of Java. To me, this is helping one of the Indonesian problem, because one of the Indonesian problem right now is what we call imbalances of regional development. Java Island, which is only 5% of Indonesian total land area, contribute 60% to our economy, while the rest of the area, especially in eastern part of Indonesia, from Bali, Nusa Tenggara, Kalimantan, Sulawesi, Moluccas, and Papua only contribute 15%. So if we don't make correction for these imbalances, and then our economy will be difficult to be competitive. So again, move out development activities, yeah, outside of Java is a very important step for Indonesia to be developed and prosperous countries. And mariculture, in my humble understanding, is one of the sectors that can help this problem. 9 reasons, mariculture to me is not a rocket science. So that most people are able to run mariculture production and business. And mariculture of macroalgae, and other flora will help reducing global warming. So this is just an example. Indonesia, in our university at Bogor Agriculture University, we have been able to inoculate about 13 species of microalgae which contain bioenergy or hydrocarbon. Yeah. This is the product of invention about the biofuel from microalgae. And this is the illustration that seaweed farming and other what we call plant aquaculture can reduce the risk of global warming. So I just want to remind of all us that mariculture is actually not only activities located at sea, but also on land. As far as the organisms coming from marine environment, that then we can call it as mariculture. So in Indonesia, brackish water shrimp one, which is the largest contributor to our foreign exchange earning, about 40%, can be considered as mariculture. I don't know to bore you. So we have a criteria to define coastal, off the coast, and offshore mariculture. So as you can see from this figure, that the trend of mariculture activity will be going further offshore. Potential of Indonesia mariculture, I don't want to repeat from Professor Johim and Professor Sarifijaya. Basically, Indonesia is the biggest potential for mariculture development. As you can see for this figure, that we have about 24 million hectares of marine areas or coastal waters that are suitable for mariculture development. And according to the recent research, that the potential production of maricultures is about 60 million metric ton per year, compared to wild stock MSY, or maximum sustainable yield, is what we call much bigger. Yeah, and the utilization rate of mariculture is very low. So this is the breakdown of potential and utilized aquaculture areas, yeah, in Indonesia. As you can see, mariculture is in total only 1.2%. So you're right, Professor Johim, that Indonesia, in terms of mariculture, we have still room for expansion. Yeah, this is Indonesian mariculture areas. Keep increasing over time, and in terms of product also increasing. Yeah? And this is the breakdown of mariculture production in Indonesia by species. As you can see, in 2018, yeah, is what we call about 16 million metric ton, but almost 10 million metric ton coming from seaweed or aquatic plants. Yeah? So the finfish, mollusk, and shrimp is only about 7 million metric tons. So this is the distribution of Indonesia mariculture production. This is the number of fish farmers, or in Indonesia we call it as fish cultivators. Yeah? And you are right, Professor Joachim, that Indonesia is the second largest producer of aquaculture commodities, only behind China. And this is the product, what we call the type of species that are produced by top mariculture producing countries. And I just want to give you some illustration how gigantic is economic potential of mariculture in Indonesia. Take, for example, lobster, okay? So we have potential areas about 12.3 million hectares. And in 2019, we only utilized about 2.25%. And potential foreign exchange earning from lobster aquaculture, if we utilize 50% of the maximum sustainable yield of lobster, it is predicted can produce about $30 billion per year, okay? While the total export of only $4.5 billion, okay? And as you can see, the employment opportunities only on farm is about 9.2 million lobster farmers. And the second illustration is about the potential or gigantic potential aquaculture. We have suitable or potential 5 million of farming farms of the total potential. As you can see, Professor Johim, yeah, we can produce about 20 billion kilogram per year. And right now, the price of shrimp of Panama, $5 per kg, 3 billion kg, will produce about 100 billion $, which is about 10%. Meaning, if we can develop 100,000 hectare per year until 2025, it can contribute about 2% of economic growth to Indonesia. Yeah? So very significant contribution from mariculture. The challenges, I think Professor Salif Wijaya already presented some of the issues and challenges facing mariculture development. Important thing is lack of infrastructure, yeah, connectivity, and in some areas, especially along the north of Java, to my observation, carrying capacity of the coastal area has been exceeded. Yeah. But outside of Java, the what we call still underutilized. This is just to give you some example about the risk of open water net aquaculture. Okay, and this is my last topic about how should development policies be directed in order to capitalize Indonesia as the world largest mariculture producer on sustainable basis. Number one, each mariculture production or business unit must be located according to original coastal sea use planning. Because in Indonesia, Professor Joachim, we already have government law that each coastal provinces or must have coastal and ocean spatial planning. This is important to guide the location of each development activities on sustainable basis. And the second policy, we have to select a leading species or top commodity for mariculture in accordance with bioecological suitability of the coastal and marine area. The third recommendation, we have to make sure that the rate of mariculture development in terms of area and level of technology reflected by stocking density of any coastal and marine region must not exceed carrying capacity. So in this case, Professor Dale Kifler ecosystem modeling package or software can be used, Dr. Safri, in Indonesia. We have to cooperate with Professor Dale, yeah, how to ensure that the rate of mariculture development in any given area must not exceed the carrying capacity. So this is just to give you example, some of the potential commodities for Indonesia's mariculture, for finfish, especially grouper, pompana pomfret, sibas or baramandi, milkfish, cobia, and so forth. And then we have also top commodities for crustacean and mollusks, especially shrimp, paname, and tiger prawn or pinus. We also have been able to culture abalone, yeah, lobster, pearl oyster, and so forth and so forth. And seaweed, we Indonesia Euhema species and agarose species of seaweed that can be useful for health. We have other what we call commodities, yeah, that each mariculture business units must implement our goal of mariculture development as emphasized by President Jokowi, not poor anymore. So the application of these four principles, economic of scale, integrated supply chain management system, best mariculture practices, and sustainable development principle must be guided very rigorously. So all Indonesian people which run a business on aquaculture must apply these four principle. And my fifth recommendation, mariculture production unit, diversification and expansion of mariculture development. Because as I said, our utilization rate of mariculture potential only 2%. So the room for expansion is, as I said, very, very gigantic. And my sixth recommendation is that all technology used in mariculture must be environmentally friendly, yeah, because Indonesia is one of the signatory of Paris Agreement. So we'd like to save not only Indonesia, but also our world there. So this is just what they call the generic model of aquaculture business system. Yeah. So we have to make sure when we help Indonesian people, we have to do it in integrated way, not only production, but also handling and processing and marketing. And why we need diversification? Indonesia, as we know, the largest marine biodiversity on Earth, and yet we have been able only 25 species of finfish and so far less compared to China, while China has less biodiversity. So from positive point of view, again, the room for mariculture expansion in Indonesia is huge. And this is just to give you some tips from FAO about 10 best mariculture practices. And Indonesia right now is one of the best and largest producers of kids net technology. This is produced by Aquatech company based in Bandung, West Java. We are proud of this product because this product is not only marketed in so all over the world. Yeah, it's good innovation. Some of innovation mariculture in the future with this kind of kids technology. This is some of the example from Norway, from the US, yeah, for offshore aquaculture. Yeah, not like in Pangandaran and Karimun Jawa, Pak Safri. Yeah, we have to define and construct offshore aquaculture according to science and technology. Just to give you some example about the application of Industry 4.0 technology in aquaculture in Indonesia. Yeah. So we have, wow, a lot of startup in aquaculture, yeah, from providing capital or credit line, yeah, construction, infrastructure, aquaculture technology, and so forth. And my seventh recommendation is mitigation and adaptation for global climate change, tsunami, and other natural hazard, because Indonesia, as you know, is one of the shopping mall for natural hazard, mariculture development from finance, infrastructure, and so forth. Yeah. And last but not least is government policies and regulation. Thank you so much and terima kasih Joachim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Professor Dahuri, and thank you for giving us a very detailed explanation of the plans that Indonesia has for utilizing the seas around its islands. You not only spoke about the ambitious plans that you have, but you also mentioned about the need for sustainable development and making sure that the local people involved are well employed. Thank you so much for your talk. We have a slight change in the lineup of the talks, and I would like to invite His Excellency Bapak Dr. Safri Burhanuddin. He's going to be boarding a plane in about 45 minutes, I was told, and he's going to give his talk before Dr. Breezy. So I would like to invite Dr. Burhanuddin to give this talk. Dr. Burhanuddin is the Deputy Minister for Human Resources, Sciences and Technologies and Maritime Culture in the Ministry of Maritime Affairs. And he has held various positions before that. So he's really one of the go-getters in the ministry. He's got his bachelor's degree from the University of Padang in Badung, Indonesia, and that was in geology. Thereafter, he moved to France in Brest, and he got his master's degree in marine geophysics from the University of Britannia Occidental. And he later on got his doctorate degree from the same university in marine geology. Bapak and Your Excellency, I would like you to give your talk, and thank you for making it possible. I know that you had a flight today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Very good morning, Joachim, and all the my colleagues, Prof. Fahmin, Prof. Sarip, Professor Rense, Prof. Kiver, and others, the participants. Please allow me to share some presentation to talk about what's the idea, because the idea of the enhanced Indonesian mariculture, especially in challenge and opportunity. I would like to thank because some of part of my presentation is already done by Prof. Sarip Wijaya and Prof. Fahmin, so I haven't not more little bit have more time to explain the other thing. So let's say the geographical condition of Indonesia. Let us see. You see, Indonesian. I think everyone now is the biggest archipelagic country and the second largest, longest coastline. But I want to say also 70% also the area of Indonesia is still the marine environment, even in on the land terrestrial, about 28%. It means we have a huge of waters environment. So how we can provide this is one of opportunity challenge, but at the same time this opportunity we have to provide this one. And Indonesian also, if you see in our slide, is as a tremendous economic potential from the fisheries, just fisheries. At least 7 million Indonesian employed from the fisheries industry and contribute at least 26.9 billion or 2.6% of GDP. It's still small if we compare the capacity of Indonesian water. And from the marine and coastal tourism, last portion of the coral triangle, at least 76% of the world coral species and contribute at least 3.1 billion annually. 44% of foreign visitors undertake marine tourism activities. And you see here, I think it's also explained from Paromi, but you can see here everyone now that the aquaculture is become bigger and bigger, and the wild fisheries become stable, or maybe is the clean. So this is opportunity how to make it bigger the mariculture activities. And we see this is our maritime economic potential based on a statistic bureau. I think one of the contributed data is Professor Romin Dahuri. You can see here when we're talking about capture fisheries, so many times we spend our time just talking for capture fisheries, but capture fisheries just contribute 1% of the whole maritime economic potential. If you compare the aquaculture, it can contribute until 16% from 1.33 trillion US dollar per year. It means that let us talking many more about aquaculture than captures. It means we have to spend our energy for aquaculture. Professor Sarip Wijaya talking about one, and Professor Rohmin and also Professor Ghosh also talking about the potential of aquaculture. It need to touch, not just to talking, but we need to action. Let's say you can see here the production, even the production of fisheries, especially in aquaculture, is still dominant like a seaweed commodity. It means the value of seaweed not so big if compared the other culture, but we need to how to call it value added at this one. Performance say we need to post production, post value added give the for the seaweed. It means we have some industrial phase to make this to give the value added. And you see here, we also mentioned also the utilization of the rate of aquaculture farming. Indonesia, from the area we understand also from the mariculture is so small. If you compare the potential is about more than 12 million hectares. If you compare the brackish water, just mariculture is just about less than 2%, about 2.7% utilization rate. It means so small. We have a big opportunity, a big window how to provide this area to make give opportunity welfare for the people around this area. And look, this is, I think you have some explanation of the challenge of mariculture development. At least we had 8 challenges of mariculture development. First is about the potential aquaculture land has not been optimal. You can see here, you can see just 2.7%. In educate production input and logistics system, we have some limited lack of the system input. So we need this how to increase and then to improve this one. The third is the production system, certificate traceability. What's called the seed of the fish and the other system we need to improve. This is one way also how to improve our production. And of course, human resources competency of small scale fisheries is inadequate. For the big industry, yes, they have a human resource good one. But for the small scale fisheries, they need more training and make some more training and then to more what you call it good management for the aquaculture. And lack of marine technology. Most of our mariculture or aquaculture is still in conventional way. So we need to increase this one, to improve this one. And disease control and environment management has not been optimal. Some areas, especially stream area, if you have some problem of the disease, we have to relocate. It means to localize the location, how to control to separate with the other in not disease impact. And the 7 is lack of supporting infrastructure. Most of the area, because it's far from the big city, is far from the central activities. So normally the lack of supporting infrastructure. So why our role now, the coordinator minister marine affairs and investment, we have to say we need to make the area is more integrated, and then we can prepare the infrastructure, integrated infrastructure to make it easy for the other. And finally, in efficiency license system. So we make a simplicity licenses. Last one, if you're an investor want to invest in shrimp pond, you need at least 21 license, and now it's become simple, just one. This is the part how to make simplicity the license. And we already put it in our midterm development plan from 2020 to 2024. We had the target. You can see here the target from fish production, seaweed production, fisherman index, and then GDP growth of fishery. We have some target. Of course, this target must be realized. So our role is clear from coordinated minister maritime affairs how to monitor and what is the target, and we have to make sure that all the planning must be on the track. If not on the track, so we will discuss what's going on, what's happened, what we can do. If we need a new regulation, and we can put in a new regulation how to make it happen. And you can see also the production and export trend of mariculture. In general, there's increase between from the seaweed 3.39. In general, there's an increase except the crab. The crab is a little bit the clean, the what's called it, the trend. And other also the export. Most of them is only a big what's called a big increase of the mariculture export. And as we see here, that is the man of important maritime culture community. I think Prof. Sharif Vijay and Prof. Pramil already mentioned, from seaweed, grouper, midfish, starfish, sea bass, lobster, cobia, and shellfish. And we will show here export value of main commodity. Ladies and gentlemen, just to let you know, the potential of maritime economic potential in Indonesia, we understood that aquaculture is 60 times than capture fisheries. But in reality, you can see here, in general, the value of the export from wild fish and from the capture fish is almost same. It's more in capture fish, about 65% is in fish in the Indonesian fish export accumulated by catch, 65%. If we compare like from the aquaculture, it's about 35%. It means we still need more to improve and then more to implement it. So why I asked my colleague, because we are side by side with Minister Marine Affairs and Fisheries, let us do now, because we have to reduce the number of discussion. Now we have to action and action now. That's the word that our minister to say. Now we have to say action. Talking, yes, we have to reduce talking, and then we did more than in action. And this is the other problem in fish fishery is still not sustainable because IUU fishing problem. There is still destructive fishing here. Is symptom of the overfishing and in several Indonesian coastal water. And other monitor system for irrigation fish resources is still weak and ineffective. That is the challenge for us how to make it better and better. And from sustainable mariculture, I think you had to explain this one from the coastal to the open sea. You can see which part from the mangrove, seagrass, which one for seaweed farming, which area is suitable for the other activities. This is the part, what you call it, we need to make it something. The area is about the carrying capacity of the each area. If you want to develop of the mariculture, it means we need the carrying capacity to make sure which commodity is the best one and how to make it happen and what do they control. And you see here Indonesian map. I think you see the Indonesian map. Most of Indonesian areas water is about deep sea water. It means more than 200 meters. The light one is the depth is about 200 meters. It's about part of eastern part of Kalimantan, northern part of Java, eastern part of Sumatra. But the other area is most of the other area is more than 200 meters. Some parts is almost it's 7,000 meters, 7,400. There is about 5,000 meters. It means we have to provide all the area is the coastal area is less than 200 meters or maybe more or less than this one. So it's very use abundant in the all the part of Indonesia, especially in eastern part of Indonesia, is still open, and then there's so many area they're still empty. Like for instance, this one, I think you can see in the Lombok. I just to show you, this is Lombok, this is Bali, maybe you know, but in the eastern part of Lombok, Bali, we know it is the Lombok Island, and we go Lombok Island, we go to the eastern part of Lombok Island, we have what we call it Elong Strait, Elong Strait. If you see here from the Google, and this is from the airborne, we can see most of the sea cage here is made by traditional one from the bamboo styrofoam. It means we need some touch how to make it happen, because if this one is still so traditional, and then we can see here also maybe conventional and the other is modern. From it also mentioned this is a part of from the aquatech product. We make it for the lobster aquaculture in Lombok. How to make it, and normally they put it they deploy in the depth is about 20 until 30 meters this one, and from the bamboo just about less than 10 meters. This is a part how to make, and we understand also the lobster need temperature more stable. It means if you put it in the less than about 30 meters, the growth rate of the lobster is better. And I want to say also that when we're talking about sustainable agriculture, of course, we have to show blue economic approach. And this is important now because when the government now is already declared that we want to launching to make a big mariculture and aquaculture in Indonesia. What is that? So why we say we have to, when we develop the aquaculture, we have to blue economic approach. It means every area we need something about the water waste, what you call it, recycle plan. This is very important now because before maybe so many pond without the proper water waste what you call it plan. Now we have to do this one. This is why, because we have to control the quality. We have to control the quality of water. We have to control the quality of product. And finally, I want to say this one. If we want to do sustainable aquaculture recommendation, we have some policy, some recommendation. First, about the policy, we already discussed in our some big meeting with the minister there. We have to determination of commodity type or focus and priority location. That is mentioned also performing. They also mentioned each location is some type of commodity. Because we want to focus, that is easy. And of course, we have to allow in line with the zonation. And of course, the carrying capacity study it will be done in this area. And others integrated aquaculture license is done. In infrastructure and facilities, so because I have to make some temporary location because we make it integrated accessibility, include road network, rail network, port and airport. is to make easy. You can imagine you catch your fish from eastern part of Indonesia, you go to some port before arriving in Jakarta, and then go to abroad to the market. It take a long journey before the fish coming to the consumer. So it's made to make it short, and it's made to take care also the quality of the fish. And provincial electricity, water, communication, we prepare this one. Provincial productive facility. Another production input, of course, we strengthening human resources. This is a part how to make it strengthen human resources. Especially it's in what's called the micro farmer, local farmer, how to make it the improved technology in small scale farmer. And other provision of spirit broodstock, what you call it, because we want to make some broodstock, it be certified. Most of the people now in our local small scale farmer, they just make a broodstock in their own way. Now, because after that, we can see the result. The product is not the good one, it's not the best one. So we consider, we also advise them to do this one. And modernization of hatchery, of course, and which hatchery and last month harvest unit we can increase the number of products. Finally, the production, we increase international cooperation. One of the international cooperation we discussed with you, we hope from the professor, from Paige, from other, from goes, we need more your advice how to make it happen in Indonesia, not just in theory, but how to make it happen, and how to optimize and live fish transportation for export. Now, if we have problem because some of this eastern part of Indonesia is still lack of the transportation, we increase the number of the logistic system and diversification of Indonesian food product to increase added value. I would like to thank you so much for your attention, because I know this is how to Indonesia to improve the aquaculture activity, especially for Indonesian welfare the people. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for a fascinating talk and for sharing this ambitious roadmap by the government of Indonesia. I really liked your statement that, and you showed through that statement that this plan, the implementation of this plan is urgent. And you said that the time to talk is over, the time for action is needed. So thank you so much, and have a safe flight, and hope we can meet soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for everyone.
Thank you. So our next speaker today is Dr. Giulio Brizzi. And Dr. Giulio, are you online?
I think, Joachim, I think Giulio is not yet coming to the list. I mean, maybe some error coming out, but maybe we can ask for the next speaker to give a...
Okay. Yes, so Dr. Giulio Brizzi is having some technical issues and he hasn't come online. Our next speaker today is Dr. Jack Rensel. He's the director of Rensel Associates and Aquatic Sciences and System Science Applications. Dr. Rensel is a graduate of the University of Washington, and I cannot say, how lucky we are to have him here today, because Dr. Rensel is involved with so many projects all over the world, and I think his expertise would be very useful for Indonesia. So with this brief introduction, I call upon Dr. Rensel to give his talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share screen. And here we go. So my role at AquaModel has been to work with Dale Kiefer to help develop the model initially because of my background since the 1970s in the very first net pens and cage culture systems in Puget Sound. And then over the years, I've become more expert at using the model, training others to use the model, and doing evaluations of its efficacy through various tests in different locations in the world. So I'll just leap right in with this. And talk about the first example would be Hong Kong Agricultural Fisheries Conservation Department. And as I'm sure most of you know, in Indonesia, it's Hong Kong has a large but very large number of very small farms owned by families. They catch wild juvenile stock usually and grow them out in mixed culture. It's a very popular industry and very well supported. The government did approach us to study existing farms and cumulative impacts. I had some background working there after the massive harmful algal blooms that they called us in from the US to help them deal with. But they also wanted to plan for newer, larger farms in sustainable locations. So in 2015, we trained staff. I went to Hong Kong several times to train staff, and we added raw fish diet as well as a pelleted fish diet that matched what they use in Hong Kong to AquaModel. We added a hybrid grouper fish physiology model, 2 types of hybrid grouper. And Hong Kong universities provided the FB-COM circulation model that would power the circulation of AquaModel to study the potential larger farms in deeper water and how they could be fit into the ecosystem. There are many fish farming zones in Hong Kong, of course, and one of the most famous ones is Tolo Harbor, here inside the green line. This is a shot of the bathymetry in AquaModel, showing the depth in meters. It's relatively shallow. It was the main receptacle for discharge of domestic sewer outfalls for many years. And through a big project, they moved it to the much better flushed Victoria Harbor area that flushes to the sea this way instead of up here. But the fish farms remain, and they wanted to study the carrying capacity, and they wanted to do the work themselves with just some advice from us. So we trained them and worked with the universities to get that going. And just as an example of the kind of things that we could look at with AquaModel, with a far field version of AquaModel, where there's vectors of current throughout the domain, the modeling domain. You can see here, this is nitrogen concentration. And notice how high it is in the backwaters, which also happen to be the backwaters would be the preferred places for the very small fish farms that are in quite shallow water. And this is a problem, and we wanted to see what we could forecast for carrying capacity versus what was actually occurring. Another thing, of course, AquaModel model is the oxygen concentration in flux. And this area, as well as other areas in Hong Kong, is subject to biomass blooms of phytoplankton that can be massive at times. And then, of course, and this is a normal situation where there's more oxygen being produced in the backwaters and less so in the main waters. But later on, of course, especially with warmer water and slack tides, then the blooms would crash and the phytoplankton would respire. And both Dale Kiefer and I have a background in phytoplankton and zooplankton ecology, and I studied it extensively on its effects on fish in graduate school and my postdoc. So what happened with the Hong Kong initiative is they began working on this, and then they branched off onto their own. They're still using AquaModel, but as you know, there are difficult times in Hong Kong these days. Another example would be the yellowtail farm being developed in Southern California for 5,000 metric tons of yellowtail, Seriola, 8 kilometers offshore of San Diego. And this is a project that NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and our team collaborated on for the environmental assessment of the project. There's 48 very large cages, and we modeled them for 10 years of continuous operation, where there was fish stocking, growth, mortality, harvest, and restocking, with all those things funneled into AquaModel using rather simple spreadsheets that the model reads. And this project is now one of NOAA's aquaculture's highest priorities, now that there's been an executive order to expedite open ocean aquaculture in the US. You can see here's the project location. Here's San Diego in Southern California, a very beautiful city, where Dale Kiefer actually studied, I believe, at Scripps Institution for a while. And here are the cages, and here's what the annual production, each one of these is a year where there's harvest and production and accumulated biomass over the time. And these currents are very strong out here. It's the California current that sweeps down from the Northern Pacific Ocean, and it continuously flows this way at about 20 centimeters per second. And that's part of its sustainability, along with deep, 95 meters deep. And just going right, cutting to the chase. And what did we find after 9 years of operation, 9.5 years of operation? Here's the background total organic carbon fraction. So this is 0.1 or 1%. And you just could see a very, very tiny increase in organic carbon on the bottom. Just a light dusting, which would do anything if we know correctly that a small amount of organic carbon actually stimulates the productivity of the ocean. So this isn't a bad thing. Another example is the Hawaiian Islands, where I worked on and off for a number of years on various projects. And this one is a Seriola yellowtail farm, a different species, Riviolani, Seriola riviolani, and it's offshore of Kona on the big island of Hawaii, where they have slower currents, but still adequate, 11 centimeters per second on average. Relatively great depths for these submerged cages. This one is above the surface right now being maintained. And they're widely spaced. And the sea bottom is very coarse, shale, and just a little bit of coarse sand. And we developed, like we do for all the projects, Dale and I developed the model for the fish that's being grown. And I should point out, these models are not lookup models where you just put in the amount of feed and you get the temperature and you get the growth. The fish respond to everything. If you have too much current, the fish won't grow as well. If you have too little current, they won't grow as well. There's an optimum range for all these species, and we're beginning to know, particularly for the important species worldwide, what those factors are. And the model inputs, and during this project, we also systematically altered the inputs to tune the model, and in a sensitivity analysis, identify the relative importance of each of them in this system. And this a little bit of the output here. And one of the outputs is total organic carbon as a fraction on the bottom, and you can see that the background is very low, in the order of 0.14%. Normally in sandy environments, you might have 0.5% or 1%. In a silty, muddy bottom, you'll be up to 3 or 4%. So this is an impoverished bottom in terms of lack of carbon. And when the farms indicated by the green dots were operating across this transect, where you got a couple of the farms picked up by the transect, this is all you'd get. Now, there was a fair amount of organic carbon raining down on the bottom, but the key to good fish farming in marine waters with net cages is to have reef suspension and distribution, so you can have the aerobic assimilations of the waste, not allow it to build up in one location. And this is exactly what they have in Hawaii. These fish are very well received, and they don't even have enough of them to export from Hawaii. You go to the fine restaurants, they're all there. Another example, we worked for several years in southern Chile with government and with industry. Currents in this area near shore where the farms are relatively moderate to weak in some cases. They have channels that go to the Pacific Ocean, but they don't actually grow too many of those locations. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about a study we did at some fish farms there, where Atlantic salmon, of course, are grown in North and South America and in Europe widely. And this study was a pilot study for the Chilean government to be able to do their own use of AquaModel and in carrying capacity assessment. Chile, like many places in the world that has extensive aquaculture development, has sustainability issues, and they have more than their own share in Chile. Disease, multiple ownerships from different large companies around the world, and the politics change, the government changes. And so that there's been some problems compared to other places that have lower production. But we felt that by siting, and you can see here in terms of the numbers of farms, these are all large farms compared to other parts of the world. And it wasn't until 2012, 13 that they slowed down the number of farms, and they're actually moving south with more farms, but these are still in production. And these are just the fish farms. In between the fish farms, you have mussel revs. And mussels do produce ammonia, and during the critical potential harmful algal bloom season, they can contribute to the blooms too. So as you go along the shoreline, almost everywhere, there's fish farms and mussel farms. It's fairly amazing. The two farms that we studied for the government, with the government, were near the Pacific Ocean. And here's the Chilean Inland Sea, Puerto Montt, the well-known town where the farms have access to the processing and supplies. And these particular farms were, like I say, 5,000 to 7,000 metric tons a year. They really load them up heavily. And the first thing I noticed was that that there was a deposition zone where the currents go this way. We put in current meters, and we knew that the deep flow was fine, but the shallow flow where the waste feces and some of the feed would go was going off to this deposition zone. And here's a result, a single screen print. And I can show you later, I actually have AquaModel running, how it's a dynamic system where you never get just one image, you get thousands of images, and you let your eye and your brain figure out what's going on by looking at it and watching the things flux through the system. But anyway, here was this fish farm on the right. Mostly waste feed was building up here and at high levels, and the fish feces, being lighter, was being transported out this way. So the synopsis is that in Chile, they have to fallow the farms after a full 20 to 22 months of culture of the Atlantic salmon, where they get up to 10 kilos each. And but you might have to fallow for a longer period with this kind of a waste deposition, because they measure right at the corners of the cages dissolved oxygen right above the bottom. And then we also were making a pitch that they should be looking at the low carrying capacity for all the fish farms. And just using two of the farms, we put together a model that was powered by the Delft model from Europe. And you can see here all these current vectors, and you can see the two farms. Here's one up near the Pacific Ocean, here's the other down south. And you can see the we've got different profiles for phytoplankton, zooplankton, oxygen transect, nitrogen transect across this red line. So it's putting out a fair amount of nitrogen. And I'm just going to flash through these like flashcards. Here, a few minutes later, 20 minutes later, the plumes are moving this way. The plumes build up during slack water when the tide's slack. And you can see that the first plume, I'll back up now. You can see that this first plume here to the north actually is transported and evected out to the Pacific Ocean, but the southern farm, it doesn't begin to get evected. And what's right up here? A mussel farm. And then this plume will turn around and go south. So anything you put into the Chilean Inland Sea, with a few farms exception, it's going to stay there. And I spent a lot of time with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution there in 2016 and 17 and even 18, talking to the industry, talking to the government, touring around, and at their expense and at the GAA's expense, the Global Aquaculture Association, to trying to pitch the idea that they should do this, but they actually ended up not doing it. And I think that part of it was the politics. They didn't really want to know. And so Chile is still struggling with what they have. So I got two more quick examples. United Arab Emirates. This is a fascinating place in the Arabian Sea. The Arabian Sea, of course, is one of the major upwelling zones in the world, and they have huge productivity of fish and shellfish, but they also have, with that productivity, they have harmful algal blooms. And this is another place where I work with my colleagues extensively, and both in the Arabian Gulf and the Arabian Sea. And we created this model of a 2D or a single current meter, as well as a 3D operation for them to use, using FVCOM from Dr. Rubao G from Woods Hole. And you can see the vectors of a single time step in his model right here. So to set this up, this is a screenshot of AquaModel, and it's showing one of the many tabs that are easily available to operators. And it's showing where capture cells are placed, or where we're going to collect data intensively throughout the water column to be able to analyze numerically what we see with our eye. And so right here, I'll move ahead to the results and showing nitrogen. In this case, I've got a nitrogen transect across here. Here's the deep water nitrogen. Here's nitrogen being enhanced right here near the surface. Phytoplankton was not enhanced, of course. And in this case, it's because the currents are strong enough that it's evected away and there's mixing. And these farms are small compared to farms elsewhere. And so we were able to say to them, this really isn't a problem. Total biomass is only 7,200 metric tons. But nevertheless, it would be an advantage to stay away from the near shore if you had resources you're worried about there. And they already have problems with desalinization plants taking in too much phytoplankton, clogging them up. And I believe that there's a number of people, Dale Kiefer and Joachim and others have been working on that. So a final example would be Atlantic Canada, where AquaModel is definitely increasing and where they have a very sustainable system, both federal and provincial governments overseeing the production of fish, which is mainly Atlantic salmon, but also steelhead and some other fish. And we're lucky because now the largest fish farming company in North America, Cook Aquaculture, who's also been my client in Puget Sound for several years, and the world's largest fish farming company, Maui, formerly Marine Harvest, use AquaModel regularly. And we don't do it for them. We train their biologists to use it. And these are people who had no background in modeling whatsoever, and now they're independent. They set up the model, they bring in the bathymetry, they bring in the shoreline, and it's very, we're very pleased with this, that they can use it, and the reports go to the provincial and the federal Canadian Department of Fisheries and Ocean, and they like our reports, and we like Canada because in Canada you have to do modeling before you put in a farm, and when you change a configuration of a farm, which happens frequently because they're trying to adjust to it, and they weren't built when models were available, many of them, to tell them how to configure them, orient them to the flows, how much fish to put in. So they have to do it. Now they have to prove to the government that it's going to be sustainable. And so we've had that good luck to be able to work with them for years and find that very fulfilling. If there's time allowed here, I can switch over briefly to the model that's running, and I don't hear any objections. Here's AquaModel domain for a two-dimensional model, which is driven by a single current meter. Here's an island, and this is in Nova Scotia.
We cannot see the screen. Can you? It's taking some time to load.
Can you see it now?
No, we are still seeing it as blank. Dale, can you see it?
Okay, I'll go back to my Zoom controls and see if I can see what's going on with that. If I can find them. Here they are. Zoom. Should be able to share screen. You can hear me. Maybe I need to. Okay, so here we go. It says stop share. I'll start again.
Okay.
And okay. You can see that now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so now I'll switch to the model. Can you see that?
No, we are just seeing squares.
Okay,
yeah,
well, it looks like I won't be able to do it. Dale's saying something. Go ahead and unmute, Dale.
Yeah, it's the bandwidth problem, probably.
Let me try. If you, Jack, just try this. First of all, stop sharing.
Okay.
And then now share again. And then choose on the, you'll see easy or AquaModel as an option, and you select it on the screen.
Right here.
And yeah, you'll see it and you should select it.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't see it on the screen here. You mean this?
You should see the easy screen. How
about that?
Yeah, there. That's it.
Now we can see it here.
Thanks, Dale. Okay, so here we are, and I don't know if you can see behind. Let's see if I can move this over. That's going to be a problem.
I think it looks good to me.
Okay, so let me just zoom in a little bit more. So what I've done is I recorded a 20-month long, I did it in a couple hours earlier today, operation. And I'll zoom in now so you can see this. These are individual cages, and you're looking at the distribution in red of fish feces and the distribution of fish fecal pellets in light brown. The currents at this site over here aren't very strong. They're usually around 5 centimeters per second. We consider that marginal for salmon farms, but you can see it's building up, and the units we're looking at here is our total organic carbon deposition on the bottom without resuspension. Now I'm going to stop the model and show you what it looks like just by going to the controls and changing the controls. Data graphics. And I'm going to go images and total organic carbon. You can see all the different choices here of things you can look at. And I'm going to get rid of the contouring and apply. Okay, now, if you can see the scale over here, we don't worry so much about the total organic rate because that is only where it lands, but it's actually being spread out. And so we've increased the background from about 0.5% TOC to a little bit over 1%. And now I'm going to stop this because this is very early on. It's I've only run 6 days, and I'm going to move ahead by moving this time bar halfway through the simulation. And you can see it's increased, but the only place where there's, and it would be an adverse effect, is right under the cages. And in Canada, they have decided that directly under the cages, it's allowable to have an impact, but not further away. So what we're seeing here now is that now the biomass is up to about 800 metric tons.
Yeah, that's point that out, that's the actual growth rate of the fish right there.
This is the biomass though.
Yeah.
So and let's go ahead toward the end, because there's something else I want to show you as this gets larger. We've programmed this easily to have the fish starting to be harvested now. You can see how the impact's gone down. There aren't any fish being reared here, but there are here. Just like in the real world, you don't harvest all your fish on one day. And so the bottom is recovering, and the kind of time scales you get for full bottom recovery is about 1.5 months for a slow current site like this, and about 2 weeks to 3 weeks for a fast current bottom. And of course, you have to wait to get recruitment of the invertebrates to have the species recover. We're not talking about the chemical remediation of the bottom. So as we move on further, you can see there's less. And oh, by the way, I wanted to show you, if I can, stop this.
Why don't you use the window? Maybe using the window will pop them up. I don't know.
I usually this works fine. It's not working right now.
If you do the windows on the, if you do the window, select window.
Around, around left, right. Okay, so what we've got is these are the sediment anaerobic and the sediment aerobic, and you can see that the anaerobic has gone down. I'll back up. Let's just rewind this really quickly, and then move ahead a couple of steps, and down further into the system. Take a time step. So here we have right into the cages, the anaerobic populations increasing. And of course, it's complemented, the aerobic population is inversely related. And what I've done is, at some of these places that I've shown you, is that we've actually collected the data around the fish farm to validate this. And it does work properly, and it is making sense. But it takes a while, and we're using organic carbon. Other places in the world use different metrics for their impact. So that's why we built AquaModel, to be fully capable of looking at oxygen, sulfides, the gamut of different things that are used in order for regulators and for the fish farmers to plan these farms, to operate them so that there'd be very little impact. And of course, NOAA and the US government's position is, let's do this offshore where we have no impact, because American citizens are so critical of anything environmental that might be adverse because of past performances by industry, that they just don't want to have any impact. And it can be done, but it's yet to be really fleshed out in great detail and to be proved. So that's in the interest of time, I should just end with this is our team. Dale, our chief programmer, Frank O'Brien, myself, a assistant software engineer, and we work closely with Dave Christian, who's a Naval Academy professor and department head, who's an adjunct model. He actually uses giant of his facility in Annapolis, Maryland, to train midshipmen, budding engineers, on hydrodynamics effects on structures in the water. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rensel. That was fascinating. Yeah, we will open, since you're the last speaker today, and unfortunately Dr. Breezy cannot make it because of some technical issues, we'll open this to further discussion. And I've seen that there are some questions already. But I'll start with my question first. Yeah, Dr. Rensel, this is for you. Could you tell us whether AquaModel can be used for site selection and the type of fish that you decide to put in the farm? And can your model be used for producing environmental impact assessment reports?
Yes to all those things. It was designed with that in mind because it's always been trial and error. It's very expensive to put a farm in and then you have to pull it apart and move it around and reconfigure it. And in the US and in many economies, you have to get a lot of permits to do that. And it's a chance for people to litigate. So you want to do it right the first time. And so, yes, that's the goal of AquaModel, is to plan in advance, to make sure that the farm will meet performance requirements. And that's something I'm very familiar. I've tracked almost every major economy that does fish farming, what they do for performance evaluations. Some do very little and some do a lot. And so you have to numerically be able to achieve those to stay in business if you're going to be successful.
So if an aquaculture farmer comes to you and says that he wants to install a farm in a particular location, what kind of initial data you need to run your model?
We need a current meter, or actually we can do it with an estimate, just a gross estimate of what, from drogues, for example, what maximum flow rates are, what minimum flow rates are. There's a simulated tidal curve where you can put in highs and lows in AquaModel, but it's better to have a current meter record that would be for a lunar month, 28.5 days, or even semi-diurnal, half of that. The longer the better. But we also, for the big projects where you want to put in multiple farms, then that's where we would prefer to have the 3D circulation models. And Frank O'Brien is good at bringing those data into AquaModel. They're very complex data, but we work with all the major ROMs, FBCom, Delph. We've learned how to deal with all of them, and we don't actually use their models. We just use their exported data, and find that to be very useful.
Thank you.
So, and I should say too, if we need some measure of what the sea bottom would be like, is it sand or silt or mud, and we prefer to know what the total organic carbon background conditions are, and if it's zero, it's zero. That's fine. But any other data that we can put into the model, AquaModel is flexible. You can put in a little bit of data. You could just say, assume that dissolved oxygen is always 7 milligrams per liter, or assume that you have it monthly and it's these different layers, or you can put it in every minute if you'd like. It's just whatever you can come up with, and you can put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and it easily reads into the model when you first start up, and then it's in the memory banks. And so as you run the model, it will refer to that. And there's other things you can bring into it, but those are the key ones: nitrogen and oxygen. And we can possibly do phosphorus too. In Hong Kong, phosphorus is a limiting agent by the Pearl River and those farm sites. And in freshwater, we've done some work in freshwater. We don't routinely use phosphorus as a limiting agent, but of course it can be.
Okay, thank you so much. Dale, there's a question for you. What is the lowest level of oxygen that fish can tolerate and maintain their body metabolism?
Yeah, well, that's very much a function of the species. Certain species can handle oxygen levels down to about 2 milligrams per, per cubic meter or per liter. Most fish, though, their growth rates will start dropping at concentrations less than about 4. And that's the critical aspect about loading the farm. If you have a lot of fish in the cage and the currents are low, the supply rate of oxygen is below the value that would allow maximal growth rates. And you can actually, in the model, see the fish starting to grow less quickly or slow down their growth rates due to oxygen limitations in the cages. And so you can also use the model to help decide when and if you want to aerate the cages. But information on exactly what oxygen levels lead to either death or to decreased growth rates is hard to come by. The Atlantic salmon is probably the most studied fish in the world because it's also the most valuable product in the global market for farm fish. But the opportunities for obtaining that type of information for graduate students is quite good. So
Dale,
these numbers are, yeah. Go ahead.
If I could jump in on you.
Yes.
What they've learned in the Atlantic salmon culture is that all major farms now use oxygen supplementation whenever oxygen drops below about 5.5 or 6 milligrams per liter. And it's made such a massive improvement of growth that it more than pays for itself. It's what happens when you stress fish to a low level. They may live, but you've actually created a stress that can be long-lived that you won't see right away. And so cold water fish for certain, warm water fish may be less sensitive to that, but I suspect that when you crowd them, you get the same thing. And so we're starting to see that throughout the world in intensive net pen aquaculture, in both in tropical and in temperate waters, where oxygen supplementation or just pumping air is adequate to sustain the fish.
Thank you. We have several questions for Bapak, Professor Vijaya. And I'll read them out to you, and you can probably answer them. So there's a question for you that says, of the many strategies for aquaculture development, which one should be addressed first? What considerations should be given to choose the priority biota that you're going to farm? And the third question is, can small farmers do aquaculture for this biota that you choose? And whether there is going to be some advice on determining a suitable location for aquaculture that considers conservation as well. So 4 questions for you. Andreas, is Dr. Vijaya there?
I think so. Let me.
Yeah.
Pak Sarif Vijaya.
Or someone else can answer if.
Maybe Pak Rohmin could give some overview about this question.
Okay.
Right,
Okay.
I can help the
Yeah.
answering
Can
the
I repeat the
criteria
questions?
for choosing. Okay, I can still memorize this question, Professor Jahim.
Yeah.
Number one is the question about what is the criteria to be used to choose the what they call priority commodities the culture, right? Number one, and then we have to choose the from supply side, okay. And number three is of course because Indonesia need a lot of employment opportunities, meaning we have to have what we call commodities that can provide employment. Based on those criteria, for mariculture, number one, the market is keep increasing, both domestic and export market. Number two is grouper, because Indonesia is one of the leading countries in terms of grouper aquaculture. Number three is of course Faname shrimp and tiger shrimp. If coastal aquaculture is considered as mariculture, And number fourth is seaweed, especially Karaginan seaweed, because we have so many suitable location for seaweed aquaculture, and the market also keep growing for seaweed, because the downstream product of seaweed, as I presented, what we call lot. That's one, and then the second question about how to choose location for mariculture. That's depending on the species, because each species requires biophysical or ecological requirement. For example, lobster requires clear water. Basically, all the criteria for site selection for each species in our Ministry of Marine Affairs and Fisheries of Republic Indonesia, we have those kind of guidelines. So I don't want to bore you, but if you want to ask in detail, we can provide those information. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
For all of the question, Professor Goes?
Yeah, yeah, there are some more questions. This is for Dr. Kiefer. Can you tell us what the very important things to develop a model of fish farm as you do? If it is, can it be applied to Indonesia? And what should be taken into account first?
Let's see. Yeah, well, definitely can be applied to Indonesia. The models, the equations we use in the model are built on the physiology of fish, for example, and the basic environmental dynamics. So, yes, this model could be used anywhere. I would say anywhere in the world. In terms of the critical factors, probably the currents are a major factor. If they're too strong, the fish will suffer. For example, they'll be burning more energy just to hold their place within the cages. If it's too slow and the oxygen concentrations are low, which is generally the case when water's warm, which will be a feature of Indonesian coastal areas or open waters. If you put too many fish in the cage and the currents are too low, the fish will suffer from oxygen depletion. So those are all features that can be calculated with very good accuracy. you could actually, the model of the fish is based on a lot of information found in FishBase, so that you can actually go to the internet, go to FishBase, look at information on growth rates of the fish. I don't think they give you respiration rates, but a simple growth curve can tell you a lot about the physiology of the fish. And then if you have any more, often you'll find there indications on what's the optimal temperature for fish growth. So I would say a combination of the currents, the temperature, and the third aspect would be whether or not the sediments are close to anaerobic conditions. If you find extremely muddy and fine silts underneath the cages, likely that the currents are very slow because you're getting deposition of fine materials. You'd prefer to have find a region where the sediments are coarser. Sand would be ideal unless the currents are too strong. But basically, you'd look at the bottom and determine the coarseness of the sediment itself as an indicator of bottom circulation.
Thank you, Dale. We are running out of time, but I have one more question that has come in. Actually, there are three more questions. And Dale, I think you have answered the first two. The carrying capacity is really important, you mentioned. And then this is a question for Bapak Dahuri. With such huge opportunities for mariculture, can you tell us why it does not expand as yet? What are the impediments to expanding mariculture in a big way in Indonesia? No?
No, I think some technical problem is coming up to
Okay.
Pak Rohmin.
Okay, so there's one more question and then we can wind up. This is for Dr. Rensel. Can you tell us whether heavy metals and microplastics are important considerations when you run the model? And how many times monitoring should be done in a year?
No, we don't model plastics, microplastics. I think that's a really important thing that needs to be solved and mitigated and stopped. But heavy metals, we could actually model that in our benthic system, because with the anaerobic conditions, of course, some of the metals are released. But you probably shouldn't be operating a fish farm over an anaerobic condition where you'd have that happening for a long period of time. Was there another part of that question? Or?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. You've answered the heavy metals and microplastics was the question. Yeah. And right, how often do you do the monitoring in a given year?
Oh, how often in a given year? That's a good question. When there's problems with fish farming, typically government agencies, one of the things they'll do will increase the frequency of monitoring, and it's and if there is a problem, then you need to monitor more frequently. For example, if you find on the monitoring that you've exceeded the criteria, or the bottom, if you don't have criteria, if there are anecdotal evidence and qualitative evidence of hypoxia or anoxia, then you'd want to resample shortly thereafter. But usually what my experience is in North America, the fish farmers, if they find that they've exceeded, they will immediately back down on their biomass. They'll move fish to other cages, they'll harvest fish, they don't want to get into a battle with the government. Because the government is stronger than they are. And we've never actually seen a lawsuit here or in Canada where a fish farmer said, no, we're just, you know, but Canada has a different system. And I could talk at length about it, but it's rational too. And in the United States, of course, we have different states. We have the different systems. And so Maine is a little different than Washington State. They're almost all based on Washington State and the US, but once a year is adequate. And now we're actually in Washington State. The monitoring is going on once a year during a set time period when it's most likely to have the most biomass. And then at any other time in the winter time, for example, where there's peak biomass, you have to also sample. So it's a lot of expense, but you know, you're doing total organic carbon and you're doing sediment grain size, because the sediment grain size puts you into different categories of performance. And it's not a big factor to the fish farmers because it's profitable enough, so they don't complain, they just do it.
Thank you.
Joachim, can I show a few? Can I just finish off with the 3 slides I think people might be interested in?
I think we are running out of time. Dear.
Okay. Then that's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that. Andreas told me that we are running out of time. But before we end, I would like to thank the speakers for fascinating talks today. You outlined in great detail the opportunities that you have in the seas around Indonesia, which really are underexploited. And there are, of course, challenges, but if it's done in a scientific manner, it could be sustainable and it could be a highly productive source of income for both the local farmers as well as big enterprises. So thank you everyone for joining in today. Wherever you are in, whether you're in Southeast Asia, Europe, or India, or the Middle East, thank you for joining. And before we end, I would like to invite Dr. Matt Wendell Clift, who's the director of IORA and the Blue Carbon Hub. He's based in CSIRO, Australia, to give the closing remarks.
Thank you, Joachim, and hello to all the participants. Indeed, it falls to me the privilege and the challenge of trying to summarize today's conversation in just 2 or 3 minutes. And perhaps I'll do that by zooming out to the big picture. What is it that we're trying to achieve? And there's no better way of doing that than looking at the SDGs. SDG number 1 is about poverty. SDG number 2 is about hunger. And really, we've made massive strides in decades in reducing undernourishment throughout the world, largely because of our ability to grow food. But still, there's more than 3 billion people, more than a third of the Earth's population, rely on seafood for a substantial proportion of their protein, many of them in Indonesia. More than 50% of the animal protein that Indonesians rely on is from the sea. So these are an important component of reducing hunger, and it's going to be more and more important, as we've heard today. But there are challenges associated with it. We've also heard from several of our speakers that we've sometimes done it in a way that has had unintended detrimental consequences. We've heard from Jack the classic story of what's happened in Chile. We also know from Indonesia and parts of other parts of the world that perhaps we've unsustainably cleared areas for aquaculture that have had consequences in terms of lack of coastal protection from things like tsunami. I think these are challenges. We were told, I think, by Pat Rockman that, you know, aquaculture is not rocket science. And it's not, but there are some challenges underlying it. And Pak Safri reminded us of those challenges. In fact, all our Indonesian speakers reminded us of the challenges, the policy challenges. how is it that we can feed the population and keep all the benefits that we have from the natural ecosystems? So it's not rocket science, but we have some challenges associated with making wise decisions. Some of them are decisions about optimizing the resources that go in. Some of them are decisions about where shall we put them. We heard today from Jack and from Dale about some science tools that will help us. So if we know a little bit about physiology, if we know a little bit about chemistry, if we know a little bit about physics, we can develop some models that help us to think through those problems and make those decisions. I guess I'd also throw in that we might want to also think through problems like epidemiology, problems like how to locate where people might get the best benefit or where we can quickly access markets. So I think Pak Safri summed it up really well when he mentioned that this is a blue economy problem. It's a broader problem that brings in lots of issues. As Joachim mentioned at the beginning, it's an issue of sustainability. It's not just about how to grow the fish. We know how to do that. And I think Indonesia is really well placed. We heard from all the Indonesian speakers that from seaweed through to groupers, we've got many opportunities in Indonesia spanning all the trophic levels that are possible to span. So the future is looking bright. I think as we bring those science tools and apply them to policy, we can make some decisions that not only help us feed the people and address that SDG, but also generate some jobs, provide sources of income that improve standards of living, and help us achieve those other benefits like regenerating the coast to provide the habitat for the seafood, to protect the villages from the ravages of storms, and many other benefits. So with that, I'd like to thank all the speakers, thank all the participants, and perhaps also thank Andreas and the great team from Kemenkema for convening yet another successful webinar. Thank you, Andreas, and I'll hand back to you.
Thank you so much for such wonderful closing remarks. Really appropriate. Andreas, thank you so much for hosting this event, and I would like to thank the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, Government of Indonesia for playing an active role in this webinar today. Thank you so much, and wish you good luck. Dale and Jack, leaders in their field, and so they are willing to help to do this in a scientific and sustainable manner. Thank you. And good night from New York, and good morning to you all on the other side of the planet. Thank you, Andreas.
Thank you, Rohmin, for the time. Give us very good information, and also to Jack Russell, to Kiefer, and as well to our chairman, Joachim Goes. Thank you for leading this session, and also to Matt from CSIRO. Thank you for, we are working together with the Australia government now, developing some various issue related to the maritime issue. And I think without further ado, I would like to again thanks to all of the panelists for very nice information to all of us. Personally, I'm learning a lot from all the speakers, but this is challenges because we have a background of scientists, but we need to link science with the real business that can feed many people in Indonesia. Thank you very much and good morning. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi Om. See you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Pak Rohmin.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay.
I need to cut my flight now.
Okay.
Thank you, Dale. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good flight. Okay, bye. Thanks, Jack and everyone. So anyway.